The Zoom room is filling up. It's noon on Tuesday. It's time for another session of our virtual speaker series. Welcome, everybody. Let us know who you are and where you're Zooming in from. We have a great program lined up for you today. Wildlife biologist and assistant research professor Derek Lee is going to talk about the Masai giraffes that he studies in Tanzania and Kenya. He's got a great presentation lined up, some great video that you don't want to miss. Thank you for joining us on the virtual speaker session presented by the Penn State Alumni Association. I see people zooming in. Leslie Jackson is here in State College and Joe Marino from East Greenville, Pennsylvania. The Eschenauers are here from Georgia. Good to see you, Connie and Terry. I'll virtually see you. Brooklyn, New York, represented by Jay Dodd. And I see Marlene from Kempton and Dick Smith from Appalachian, New York. John Hess, a regular here, class of 87 from Westchester, Pennsylvania. Good to see all of you joining us today. We'll be getting started in just a minute or two. A reminder, if you have questions for Derek today, you can put them in the Q&A feature. And if you are interested in closed captions, you can click on the closed caption tab at the bottom of Zoom. And then from there, you can click show subtitles. That will activate your closed captions. There's also instructions in the chat box so that you could see how to activate your custom closed caption experience. Where else would you rather be than a Zoom full of Penn Staters? Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and I want to welcome you to today's virtual speaker session. Live closed captions are available for this event. You can access them by clicking the closed caption button at the bottom of your Zoom video window and then clicking show subtitle. You can also customize your caption view by clicking the stream text link posted in chat. We are live streaming today's presentation, and this live stream has been made possible through the gracious support of a donor and the Fund for Access, Ideas, and Audacious Goals. Today's presentation will be archived and available on our website after the event. This afternoon, we welcome wildlife biologist and assistant research professor Derek Lee. Masai giraffes live only in Tanzania and Kenya, and their numbers are falling fast. Habitat loss and illegal hunting have caused the Masai giraffe numbers to decline over 50% in the last few decades. Our conservation science research is discovering where Masai giraffes are doing well and where they're not, and why, so that giraffes and people can thrive together. We study wild Masai giraffes using each animal's unique spot pattern as identification, along with big data tools to document births, deaths, movement, and behavior of thousands of individual giraffes. Derek Lee is a wildlife biologist and activist scientist with 20 years of experience in the field. In 2010, he co-founded the Wild Nature Institute to study the ecology of endangered wildlife and inspire action to protect wild nature. In 2011, he established the first long-term study of Masai giraffes. And since then, he has been living and working full-time in Tanzania. He is a Fulbright Scholar in 2012 and is the author of more than 50 scientific publications on wildlife ecology. Please join me in welcoming Professor Derek Lee. Derek?
Hi, Paul. Thanks. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in today. I'm just going to share my screen here. Thanks for tuning in to hear about giraffes. So in this talk, I'm going to share some tall tales from Tanzania about giraffe science and the reasons for hope in the biodiversity and climate crises. My colleagues and I have some stories to share about giraffes, why they're struggling for survival, and what's being done to help them in their African savanna homelands. Although giraffes are facing some serious challenges, this will be a story of hope. Giraffes are immediately recognizable and beloved throughout the world because we are constantly surrounded by images of big animals like giraffes. We believe they're abundant, but in reality, all the big animals like giraffes and elephants and rhinos and lions are headed towards extinction. In 1 year, 800,000 Sophie the rubber giraffe toys are sold in France, which is 8 times more Sophies than all the real giraffes remaining in the African wild today. This ancient rock art image of giraffes from Algeria shows humans have long been visual storytellers fascinated by giraffes. And this presentation I'm giving today is a form of visual storytelling that I hope will entertain you as much as it educates. I'm going to have some love stories to warm your hearts. I'll have an adventure stories for excitement, murder mysteries to solve, and I'll share some stories of people banding together to fight a common enemy, a nice hero story. And all these stories are going to be about people who've dedicated their lives to giraffes, more or less. So we'll go on a journey now to the African savanna. This landscape preserves some of the world's last wild nature. And 9 years ago, I started a long-term science, education, and action program to save giraffes in Tanzania. So why giraffes? Because giraffes are popular and beautiful and iconic, giraffes can be a lightning rod that channels the energy of human ingenuity and cooperation into protecting wild nature. The major focus of our giraffe conservation research is population ecology, or the study of births, deaths, and movements. And understanding why births, deaths, and movements are different in one place compared to another tells us why a population is increasing or decreasing. And this provides the critical information we need to successfully protect wildlife. So how do you quantify births, deaths, and movements? You do this by identifying individual animals and observing them repeatedly through time. Luckily, giraffes have a built-in identifier, just like our thumbprint, and this is their individually unique spot patterns. We identify giraffes from photographs of the spot pattern, and we track them throughout their lives without ever having to touch or disturb them. And these are spot patterns from individuals in the Tarangire National Park, and you can see the incredible amount of variation in these spot patterns, even in the same population. Ours is one of the biggest studies of a wild animal in history, and as we learn more about giraffes, we're developing the most effective conservation measures to save them from extinction. Giraffes are very large, growing up to 19 feet tall, can live up to 40 years. Females form herds with other related females and their young, and they can give birth in any month of the year. There's no seasonality. They typically have only one calf at a time, and they hide that calf for the first couple of weeks before bringing it to meet the rest of the herd. This calf has not yet joined the others. It's still in hiding, very freshly born, that one. Once a mom and calf join the herd, the calves form groups called creches, and one or a couple of older females will watch over the creche so the other mothers can travel around each day to find food and water. It's the giraffe kindergarten. After about 4 or 5 years, young males leave their mother and form bachelor herds where they fight to establish a dominance hierarchy. When they become older bulls at about 8 years old, they're mostly solitary, roaming around on an endless search for females in estrus. Giraffes share the African savanna with the richest diversity and abundance of large mammal species on Earth. In our study areas, we still have the full suite of predators like lions, leopards, and hyenas, and we also have some of the densest elephant populations in Africa, and thousands of migratory wildebeests and zebras. Tanzania is a place where we can get a glimpse of the Earth as it was thousands of years ago when wild animals ruled the world. This is a map of the current range of all 9 subspecies of giraffes, and there's been a 40% total decline over the past few decades, and giraffes have disappeared completely from several countries where they used to live. The Masai giraffe is in East Africa. It's the most numerous subspecies, and most of them reside in the country of Tanzania, where we work. But the giraffe population in Tanzania has also declined by about 52% since 1980. The biggest threats to giraffes are habitat loss, deforestation for cooking fuel, and illegal killing for bushmeat markets. The Wild Nature Institute's conservation activities address all these impacts at the landscape scale using science, community education, and actions to protect wildlife and trees and to promote Indigenous peoples' rights. Our research program is focused in the Serengeti and Tarangire ecosystems, 2 of the greatest wildlife areas in the world. In Serengeti, the majority of the wildlife habitat is protected lands marked in green, and in Tarangire, most land is not protected, but is inhabited mostly by livestock keeping Masai people who are our allies in protecting giraffe habitat from destruction by farmers. So we use digital photos, computer vision, and pattern recognition software to monitor births, deaths, movements, and behaviors of more than 4,000 individual giraffes. Our research is investigating how giraffes are affected by the world around them, including natural predators, diseases, poaching or the presence of humans, and vegetation changes. We can even see how intrinsic individual traits, like the type of spots they have, affect their evolutionary fitness. 6 times each year, we spend a few weeks surveying for giraffes all day long and bush camping each night. We count and map hundreds of groups of giraffes and take more than 1,000 photographs of giraffe spot patterns every survey. We're working with big data for tall animals, so we use artificial intelligence and algorithms to automate some of our work. After we collect our ID photos, an artificial intelligence finds the giraffe in each photo and crops it. And a pattern matching software uses computer vision to score these thousands of new photos we get each survey against more than 50,000 existing photos, making millions of comparisons. So after we collect and process all of the photographs and analyze the data, what kinds of things have we discovered? So we'll begin our tall tales with a mystery story about the spots. Consider that no other mammal on Earth has spots like a giraffe. And people often asked us, does a baby giraffe inherit its spot patterns from its mom? And we didn't know the answer, and it's a great question, so we set about answering it. Here we see 5 examples of mother-calf pairs, and you can see there are similarities between the mother and the offspring in the shapes of the spots. And we quantified this by measuring all the spots in the pictures and found that some aspects of the spot shape are indeed inherited from the mother to the calf. And we also found that variation in the spot shapes among the calves affected their survival during the first few months of life. So we think camouflage likely plays an important role in early calf survival when it's hiding in the bushes. The next story is a love story that's also an adventure story and a biography of the world's first giraffe scientist. Giraffology started with this woman, Anne Innes-Dagg, also known as the woman who loves giraffes. She left Canada and went on an adventure to Africa alone in 1956 and was one of the first people to study animal behavior in the wild. And she had a bit of a difficult time because men kept telling her she couldn't do these things, go to Africa and study giraffes alone. But she persevered and she became the godmother of all giraffe scientists. And she's also a very inspiring person for her lifelong struggle for a more just and caring world. And I encourage you to read more about her or see one of the movies that was recently made about her life. Another love story I'd like to share is the story of Giraffe Friendships. Here are all the giraffes in Tarangire with lines linking those that have been seen to hang out with each other during our surveys. So this is like the friends network of giraffes. And giraffes have a complex social system that's similar to the societies of humans and chimpanzees. Individuals hang out with a subset of the other giraffes in their neighborhood, but they like some much more than others, and there are clear units of friendship. Now, this is the same data where the dots are colored for about 1,000 individual adult female giraffes, and the colors show their social communities. These are the giraffe girl gangs of Tarangire. So even in the same area of space, there can be multiple communities of giraffes overlapping, but they do not interact with each other. Amazingly, these girl gangs have different survival and reproductive rates, so social communities could play a role in evolution. We know humans are incredibly social animals with happiness and survival benefits from having good friendships, and it's the same with giraffes. We found the main determinant of adult female survival is the number of friends she hangs out with. And so for these females, having relationships with familiar individuals can reduce stress and improve health, just like with people. A classic adventure tale is the hero's journey, where a young adult goes into the world and overcomes adversity to discover some great truth. And the animal version of this adventure is called Dispersal, when a juvenile giraffe leaves its mother and starts a new independent life. And this dispersal is very important because it spreads genetic diversity, and it's how animals move into new areas or recolonize areas where they had previously disappeared. However, dispersal patterns for giraffes was largely unknown before we conducted our research. So this diagram represents a young adult giraffe within the social community of its mother, the black circle, where it was born. And if this male moves to a new social community that did not overlap with his mother's home community, he'll find new females to breed with that he's not related to, but it's dangerous because he's going into unknown territory and he's more likely to die. We discovered a phenomenon in giraffes called social dispersal, where young males stay in the same familiar area where they were born and raised, but they join a new female social community. So inbreeding is avoided without the danger of a long distance trip. Young males usually move into new social communities, but young females usually stay in the same social community where they were born. And because it's important for adult females to maintain their relationships over their entire lifetimes. Now for some more darker stories, some murder mysteries for the Sherlock Holmes fans out there. This is an adult female and her 6-month-old calf out for a pleasant walk in the savannah, but dangers lurk in the bushes. Some of our adult females and calves die each year under suspicious circumstances. So we investigated the likely culprits, and we think we found the guilty parties. We found adult female survival is higher inside the national parks, where they're well protected from the poachers who mostly work outside the parks. Then we found calf survival was higher outside the parks because there were many fewer natural predators like lions and hyenas outside the park. So the killers of giraffes have age preferences, where natural predators are responsible for the calf deaths and humans are more responsible for killing the adults. Now, since this analysis was done in 2015, there's been less poaching in Tanzania thanks to a government anti-poaching and anti-corruption effort. And we're excited to report that our new data shows that the government's efforts have resulted in increasing adult female giraffe survival outside the parks as well. Another interesting thing we found is how the lions and migratory herds of wildebeest and zebras affect giraffe calf survival. Zebras and wildebeest migrate around the ecosystem, and so their local densities change a lot over the course of the year, while giraffes and lions do not migrate. We found the survival of giraffe babies depends on the presence or absence of these migratory herds. When there are lots of wildebeest and zebras around, the lions tend to eat them, and the giraffe calves enjoy higher survival. But when the wildebeest and zebras have left the area, the lions eat more giraffe calves. So there's this link between the migratory animals and the giraffes, and as the migratory herds decrease in numbers due to human land uses and poaching, then giraffes are also negatively affected. So to save giraffes, we have to save all the other animals too. Now for another love story. Who is loving whom? We don't know. Nobody knows which males are fathering the calves in wild giraffe herds. There are lots of different strategies males could be using to win the hearts and other body parts of females. And right now we have no idea which strategies giraffes use and which are the most successful under different conditions. But genetics will provide the answer. This is the focus of our current research at Penn State. The DNA from our dung collection project is genotyping all the giraffes in our study. So soon we'll know who's related to whom, and we'll have an exciting conclusion to the tale of who is loving home. Some heroes stay at home to save their community. And wildlife management areas are community conservation areas where villagers dedicate a portion of their lands to wildlife habitat and make money from tourism. WMAs are providing crucial funds for local people who agree to set aside some of their land for wildlife. And these funds pay for schools and health clinics and other projects, but nobody knew if the WMAs were working for the wildlife. No one had ever documented that. So we looked into it and found that the 2 WMAs near Tarangire are indeed successfully conserving wildlife with increased survival and density due to the WMA conservation activities. We've shown that community conservation can play an important role in the future of giraffes. These are some of the real-life Tanzanian superheroes. Wild Nature Institute supports parks and community conservation areas, not with our research alone, but also by supporting and celebrating law enforcement and anti-poaching rangers and village game scouts. Many heroes are created, not born, so we're encouraging Tanzanian scientists to become superheroes for giraffes. Last year, we began working with Dr. George Lohe. He's developing techniques to collect DNA from giraffe dung for our genetic studies. And our Tanzanian crew is conducting our giraffe photographic surveys. During this pandemic, they've been able to keep the data flow uninterrupted. And we're also advising Tanzanian master's students like Matana Levy, who's studying giraffe diet and foraging ecology. So all the science in the world is not going to save giraffes without the support of the people who live alongside these animals. It's important to inspire the next generation of conservationists. So another aspect of our work is community education. We developed our Celebrating Africa's Giants education program to inspire Tanzanian children to save giraffes, rhinos, elephants, and wildebeest, and all the creatures that share the savanna with them. We produce children's books and posters and accompanying learning activities that teachers are using in their classrooms. We use stories to create a bond of empathy between kids and animals, stories where the animals are the main characters and the animals are experiencing things that the kids can relate to. And very importantly, the books are visually beautiful and the stories entertaining, so learning is fun. If you want to talk about superheroes, teachers are the big time superheroes. We host workshops for teachers where they learn and practice the hands-on activities we've developed that they can use in the classroom. And to date, we've trained more than 200 teachers throughout Tanzania to implement our Juma the Giraffe education program. Our program has reached more than 26,000 kids across Tanzania, and we just hired a new education coordinator because the demand for the program is so high. We also organize giraffe fun days at the schools where kids celebrate giraffes by doing drama and arts, planting trees, playing sports, eating a nice meal, and having a great time. And this way the kids connect giraffe conservation with fun. We also take kids on outings to the neighborhood national parks. Here, our Tanzanian education coordinator took children to Lake Manyara National Park near where they live, but most of them never are able to visit the parks, so we're trying to facilitate that. We also produce Swahili gospel and hip hop songs about giraffe, how beautiful and amazing they are, how to protect them. And we play these videos on radio and TV and on buses and reach thousands of Tanzanians with creative media messaging. So let me share my computer sound. Get a taste.
Urithi wetu ni alama ya taifa letu, ndiye mnyama mrefu huvutia watalii nchini kwetu. Wapiga wanapungua, uwajibika, tuulinde urithi wetu. Wako twiga wanapungua, uwajibika, tuulinde urithi wetu.
So, Wild Nature Institute scientists are affiliated with Penn State University, the University of Zurich, and Nelson Mandela African Institute for Science and Technology. And our largest supporters are listed here, many zoos and foundations, and we could not do this important work without the support of these zoos and foundations. Saving giraffes from extinction will take concerted efforts to address the problems that giraffes and other wildlife are facing, mainly direct killing and loss of habitat. We need effective community conservation to help people and giraffes to thrive together. And the Wild Nature Institute's goal is to have a world with more living giraffes than rubber giraffe toys. And we think that based on these stories of hope and our built-in human superhero powers together, we can make that world a reality. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and I'd be happy to answer any questions now.
All right, thanks, Derek. We do have a number of questions coming in. First and foremost, let's start off with you and the job that you do. What is your favorite part of the work that you do?
Oh, it's being out in the bush with the animals and watching them go about their business. Doing giraffe stuff is always a pleasure, just to go out there and see wild nature just being and teaching me. I'm learning all the time. I've been out in the bush hundreds, thousands of days now, and every day is new and exciting, and I'm learning something and seeing something I never saw before.
Excellent. As a reminder, if you have a question, you could go ahead and submit that in the Q&A tab. Couple of questions coming in here. So you talked about the different markings on the sides of the giraffes, but does the coloration of the giraffe mean anything as well?
We don't know exactly how the coloration is interpreted by the giraffe. So a big part of our research is looking at the spots and what function those spots serve. They could be for communication between the giraffes. They could be for camouflage to avoid predators or parasites. They could also be thermoregulatory. So they could be helping the giraffe maintain body temperature, appropriate body temperature. And it's probably a combination of all those things, the purpose of the spots, the shapes and the colors that they have. But we're just getting into this now. It's a new realm of investigation, and we're just trying to put the pieces together. But this probably has something to do with, we know the giraffes can recognize each other, and they probably use the spots as part of that. So there's definitely some communication going on. And we know there's probably some camouflage aspect with the calves surviving better with certain spot patterns. There's a lot of good evidence that zebra stripes were evolved to avoid blood-sucking parasites. So maybe there's a role for giraffe spots there as well. And I'm sure the color has something to do with it too. A really exciting thing we're looking into is looking at giraffe patterns and coats with a full spectrum camera that captures all of the light and reflectance beyond what the human eye can see. And then you can look at giraffes in the way that giraffes perceive them with their eyes, and the way blood-sucking parasites see giraffes with their eyes, and how lions see giraffes with their eyes, and at day and at night. So we're going to get into that stuff, but it's just early days in that topic. So
you decided to become a wildlife biologist, right? What drew you to studying giraffes in particular?
Well, they're amazing and they're just spectacular. I took my wife on safari for the first time back in about 2005, and they were immediately her favorite. She's a wildlife biologist as well. We're both lifetime wildlife biologists. And we're talking about, how wonderful it would be to do a project with giraffes. And then when an opportunity came up to do that, we jumped at it and picked up stakes and moved to Tanzania to make it happen.
Excellent. So a lot of people asking questions about the World Wildlife Fund, and if there's any connection with the work that you do or coordination with your conservation efforts with World Wildlife Fund.
Nope. I've never spoken to anyone from them, and they've never called me up. So no, we're independent, the Wild Nature Institute.
A lot of people may be interested in helping out. Do you need volunteers, or do you take volunteers to Africa with you?
Well, the rules in Tanzania don't let us do that. The government has very strict rules about doing research and tourism in the country, and we aren't able to take volunteers there. We do have a project that we did in the States where we put our photographs online, and a lot of volunteers helped us to mark the photographs, and then we measure the giraffes in the photograph based on those marks. And so we had about 50,000 images and several thousand volunteers that helped with that. So that's the best way we have for volunteers to help. But if someone wants to come and visit Tanzania, I encourage them to go on safari, and the money that's spent there will inadvertently help conservation because it goes to the national parks there and keeps the lodges open, which helps a lot of local people.
There's questions coming in here about, are there other breeds of giraffes found in the parks in Kenya and Tanzania? And then a related question, can they interbreed with each other? So can Masai giraffes breed with reticulated and Rothschild and other families?
Yeah, there are 9 subspecies of giraffe at the moment that taxonomists have more or less agreed to, and 1 species of giraffe. There's good evidence that there's probably 3 or more species of giraffes, and Masai is one of those distinct species of giraffes. And there is evidence that giraffes can hybridize in zoos, but in the wild, they rarely interbreed. So there must be some behavioral, or maybe it's like those spots are communicating to each other that they're a different kind and they don't breed with each other in the wild. It's possible in captivity, but like a liger, it's something that you don't really see much in the wild.
Okay. Marlene wants to know, why don't girl gangs interact with each other? They could have more friends and therefore enhance their longevity.
Yeah, good point. We don't know why exactly the behavior is the way it is. We documented that pattern, and I think it's probably stems from a relatedness issue. I think those girl gangs are probably kin groups of a sort, and then they get what's called inclusive fitness. So if you help your brother or sister and help them reproduce, it's equivalent to your own reproduction. So it could be something like that. We don't know exactly because we still are opening the book of giraffe genetics, but that's a good point, and I'll have to get back to you on that with more details once the data comes in.
Through your studies, have you found any impact through climate change and global warming on the giraffes that you study?
We haven't looked at that yet. We are just getting into our 10th year, so now is sort of the time that we'd like to look at climate variation and how it affects the giraffes. Because they're so big, they have kind of a natural body mass buffer against year-to-year changes in the climate. But it could be that there are booms of reproduction after particularly good years. So we're going to start looking at that. These last 10 years, we've seen one of the biggest droughts of the decade and also one of the rainiest years of the decade. So we're hoping that when we get into that, we'll be able to pick that apart. But so far, we haven't seen any big climate-related effects with the giraffes. That's one of those long-term things that we're going to have to be patient for.
So what is the gestation period for a female giraffe?
It's 15 months. And they have about 1 calf every 20 months. So if they're having calves as fast as possible, they typically have a calf about every 20 months. So it's kind of interesting because that means that every calf is born at a slightly different time of year. And so we've looked at how the giraffe calves fare when they're born in different seasons. And it turns out being born in the dry season is the best for them, but it's only a small difference. So there's no evolutionary force pushing them to all be born at the same time of year yet, but maybe under a changed climate, you'll see stronger evolutionary pressures pushing the giraffe to become more of a seasonal breeder, even at the equator where they can have calves all year long.
So this is a little bit of an aside, but the 15-month gestation period, I recall it was probably 3 or 4 years ago where there was a giraffe at a wildlife park up in New York that was on camera. And it seemed like, so it was advertised any day now, this giraffe's gonna have a baby. And I feel like we had that live cam on for 3 months. So yeah, it took forever. There is actually a question about that. What is the your opinion of draft programs like that at the Wildlife Adventure Park in upstate New York?
I prefer to see giraffes wild and free and autonomous. If all giraffes were wild and free, I would be much happier. But I think that the zoos and especially animal rehabilitation places where native fauna that have been injured by people or accidents can be cared for and can be used for environmental education are very helpful. For people who don't normally have a chance to interact with animals, it can be a personal bonding experience that really starts a lot of lifetimes of caring for animals and caring for nature by having that experience. And so many urban people or even suburban people miss that outside of their pets. And so I think it plays an important role in bringing a link between people and the wild animals.
A question coming in. So how often, so let me ask this one first. You said that giraffes usually have one baby at a time, but the last photo showed 3 babies with 1 adult. Does one mother care for more than 1 baby?
Not normally. That was a very unusual situation. It was the first time that anyone had ever documented what's called allo nursing, giving milk to a calf that's not your own. And so that photograph was published in a journal with our account, showing that wild giraffes will sometimes nurse calves that are not their own. People had seen that in zoos, but had never seen it in the wild. It's extremely rare.
So a number of people want to know about giraffes and their ability to communicate with each other. Do giraffes have, someone put it, do giraffes have voices, but do they make sounds and have ability to communicate with each other? And what can you learn from that?
They do. They communicate both sonically with noises and also visually with gestures and body movements. They do a lot of visual signaling with like head tosses, and they can wave their mane, so their mane will kind of have a flicker to it, and they can use their legs to communicate with each other. But they do also make noises. They don't have a voice that you hear normally. They're normally considered to be silent, but they can make noises. They recently found some giraffes making a noise they called a hum at night in a zoo. And so you can find that on the Wikipedia page and online recordings of this humming. To me, it sounds like a wooden ship creaking. It's kind of a sound. And they probably do this to, sort of let each other know where they are at night when it's dark and you can't see each other. And they also will communicate with noises like coughs and snorts, but they'll also make sort of a wailing sound when mothers or calves are extremely distressed because one or the other is being eaten. Then they'll make these kind of noises like rabbits normally don't make noises, but if they're really stressed out, they'll make a noise. It's something similar to that.
So I know each night, if I don't get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, I'm a mess the next day. I'm tired, I'm sluggish. How do giraffes survive on such little sleep?
They're amazing. This is an adaptation that they have where they kind of sleep in these 20-minute bouts. And in that 20 minutes, there's 5 or 10 minutes of REM sleep. And they do these naps, and they do it during the day. They can do it at night. They're also, they're ruminants, like a cow with a 4-chambered stomach. And ruminants have this amazing adaptation where as they're ruminating, they can set their brains into a sleep-like state. So as they're ruminating and chewing their cud, even though they're awake, their eyes are open and they seem to be awake, their brains are actually kind of asleep. So they can get some of the benefits of sleep by doing that as well.
So a number of people interested in going to Tanzania and visit the Serengeti, and they're interested in any advice that you have for the best way for tourists, whether it's through a safari company, to be able to see giraffes when they go on these photo safaris.
Well, if you come to Tanzania and you go to Tarangire or Serengeti National Parks, I can promise you'll see giraffes. They're very numerous in these places. And if you go with a reputable tour company, you should have a great experience staying in the park and seeing giraffes on your daily game drives. And a lot of that money is paid directly to the parks, and the Tanzania National Parks Administration uses that money to protect those lands and conserve the animals. So it's a great way to feel good about having a wonderful trip.
So where in Tanzania are you actually based when you're there studying?
We spend some time in Arusha, which is sort of the safari capital of Tanzania. It's a medium-sized city in northern Tanzania. And that's where most of the services are, like if I need my vehicle repaired or I need to get parts or whatever. Mostly my life revolves around vehicle repair. And so Arusha is the place for that. Lots of mechanics, and that's where a lot of parts are available. And that's sort of the hub of the safari industry in the northern part of the country. And I have a house there. And then I also have a house out in the Serengeti because it's quite far to get out there when we do work in the Serengeti. And then when we're in Tarangire, we just camp. It's a couple hours from Arusha, and we go out for a week or two at a time, and we're just camping. And then when we're get too much rain or mud, then we head back to town.
So off camera, you and I were talking. You are in North Carolina right now. In the introduction, I mentioned that you spend most of your time in Tanzania. My assumption is that you're in North Carolina, kind of trying to wait out COVID.
Exactly.
So what has the impact of COVID been on your work, have been on the people in Tanzania that you come in contact with?
Well, it kind of snuck up on us. We normally make a trip every year from Tanzania to the States in March. And this year was just like any other year, but there were these stories of COVID as we were getting ready to leave. And then like the day before we left was when they made the travel ban from Europe to the States. We were still able to get to the States, but then everything, sort of fell apart in terms of international travel. And we just felt it was safer to shelter in place. And so we've been staying with family since March and running our project remotely. Luckily, we have Tanzanian staff in Tanzania who we've been training to do all the work, and they rose to the challenge and took over all of the responsibilities that they needed to do. They've been collecting all the data we need uninterrupted. They've been fantastic. Right. The Tanzanian response was similar to many countries of denial, and they stopped. They said that COVID was gone from the country and stopped counting any data on that. I haven't heard reliable information about what's happened since then, but the work goes on. The guys have been fantastic. Vela, our new education coordinator, the schools have reopened, and she's going into the schools every day and working on the education program. And life, from everybody that I've talked to in Tanzania, life continued as normal. Nobody noticed a big change, even from March till now. And after the initial shutdowns, things are back to complete normalcy. They are missing a lot of tourists because most Europeans and Americans were the bulk of the tourism clients. And so they're suffering because the tourism economy is the largest dollar earner for the country and the biggest sector of the economy. And so they're suffering with a lack of clients, but they do have a very diverse economy with mining and agriculture and lots of services. So the country is struggling, but is doing pretty great.
So a couple more questions coming in. First, if a giraffe survives poachers and survives predators and survives disease, how long can a giraffe expect to live?
I think the oldest recorded giraffe was in a zoo, and I want to say 40 years, if not 40, very close to 40 years in a zoo. We don't know how long they live in the wild because no one's ever watched them close enough for long enough.
Right.
But it could be longer than zoos. It could be shorter than zoos. We don't know. Some wild animals survive better in the wild, and some survive better in under care. So we don't know yet, but our hypothesis for the time being will be about 40 years, based on that one record from a zoo, and we'll have to get back to you in about 30 years with an update.
All right, we'll hold you to that.
Yep.
What in terms of interactions with humans are giraffes friendly? Do they recognize you all as researchers or as humans that they've seen before? Do they destroy crops or other human settlements? Kind of what's the interaction between humans and giraffes?
It's mostly benign. So that one of the great things about working with giraffes versus lions or elephants is they don't kill people.
Right.
Or if they do, it's extremely rare, and it's usually an accident. So they also don't raid crops. So that makes them, it's quite easy to convince people that giraffes are not a problem, because they don't have any experience with giraffes being a problem in their everyday lives. I think in captive environments, zookeepers say that giraffes have personalities, and they recognize you. They recognize the keepers that they see every day. We don't experience that so much in the wild ones. We're seeing thousands of giraffes for just a few minutes every couple months. I don't think they recognize us, but they're also, so they're not neither attracted nor repelled by us. In general, giraffes are very, they don't particularly like being around people.
Right.
When people move into an area, or if the human population gets too dense in an area, the giraffes will move away from there. So they avoid interacting with people in the wild. There's two main types of people: farmers and pastoralists who keep livestock like cattle and goats. And the pastoralists, they don't alter the habitat appreciably. So, and they also don't kill wildlife. They do not poach for the most part. So those people live harmoniously with giraffes and lots of other wildlife. And you'll see them in Masai country. You'll see giraffes and pastoral people in the same area passing by without neither caring much about the other. Farmers, on the other hand, do large conversions of habitat. They also chop a lot of trees for fuel wood. One of the main ways to earn cash in Tanzania is to make charcoal and sell it. So there's a big deforestation problem across Tanzania, and the farming peoples also tend to be more likely to engage in poaching and bushmeat markets. And so those people have a lot of conflict with giraffes. It's very one-sided, where the people are making life hard for giraffes, whereas the giraffes are not really doing anything to hurt the people.
Great. We have time for two more questions. First, what's your advice to somebody who wants to become a wildlife biologist?
Oh, that's a great question, and you should definitely do it. If you like nature and wildlife and being outside, you should definitely study hard, study the sciences. You need to have good math skills. Statistics is the key that opens up a lot of opportunities. So I know some statistics that has opened up many doors for me. Also learn practical skills, like I was talking about car repair earlier. I spend as much time working on my car as I do on my computer. So if you can learn practical skills like mechanicking, plumbing, cooking, everybody likes a good cook at the remote field station. And so you have a better chance of getting work that way. But definitely follow your dream, go to school, get some maths, and get some practical skills. That's the best way to get ahead in this game.
Absolutely. And if people are interested in supporting the work that you're doing, how can they be supportive?
If you want to go to wildnatureinstitute.org, we have a website, and there's a donate page there, and there's a lot of information there about other ways you can support us in addition to just money support and donations. We have something called Being a Giraffe Hero, where we can come up with a plan, whatever your skill set. If you're an accountant, if you're a copywriter, whatever, we need skilled people, whatever your skill is. We need help in it because we're amateurs in everything except wildlife biology.
That is great. Well, I want to thank you. I hope you get a chance to take a look at the chat because there's a lot of people who love today's presentation and they are sending kudos to you.
Thanks.
Derek, thanks for joining us on the virtual speaker session.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who tuned in, and I hope you all can have a great 2021.
That's all the time we have for today. Thanks again to Derek Lee for joining us. I also want to thank you for those who have tuned in today's virtual speaker session. As a reminder, we'll be hosting additional sessions in the coming weeks and months, and this program is in addition to a wide array of online networking and career programs that are available throughout the year. You can view a full listing on our website at alumni.psu.edu. Thanks again, and we are
Penn State.